Welcome to the Business Spotlight series. My name is Tanner O'Brien. I'm a senior partner here at Action Coach in Central Texas. Today, I'm sitting down with a good friend of mine, Tyler Lautke, who is a realtor at Coldwell Banker Hedges Realty. Excited to be jumping in, having some conversation about a whole bunch of different things, from kind of the real estate industry to just kind of like general business type stuff, and just overall, fun conversation here. So, Tyler, I'm excited to have you on. Excited to have some, conversation with you here today. Let's just start with a little bit of background. For those that have not met you before, give us the 10,000 foot view. Give us a little bit of your history and tell us about kind of the market that you're in, and what it means to you to be a realtor.
Yeah, definitely. So just kind of like the elevator pitch that I always tell people is I went to Luther College, which is how I met you, obviously, because I thought at 18 I was going to be a pro soccer player. Learned that that's definitely not the case, and then thought I was born and bred to be a social worker. Got into the industry of real estate back in 2018 because a friend of mine wanted to go to this real estate seminar where our company here at Coldwell Banker Hedges, they offer a $50,000 a year salary for 1 year to be a realtor. So she wanted to be a realtor. I didn't. I was in a very good job at the point, and she left the seminar saying, I don't want to be a realtor. And I said, holy crap, I'm doing a career change. So that's kind of what happened. And I interviewed against quite a few people, and they somehow chose me to be the apprentice. And it's really what launched me into this career. So I've only been doing this for like 7-ish years. The math is hard for me, but since then I've kind of gained a ton of traction. I'm in the top 2% of agents in the entire world. Before getting married and changing my last name to a made up word. My last name was formerly Funky, and I just kind of took that to the bank and became the funky agent and just did things weird, which fit my brand. So as a person, and that's really all there is to it.
Oh
Yeah.
man, that's so fun, and it's always fun to catch up with old friends. So after a number of years and kind of hear the journey. So I'm excited to kind of dive into that a little bit deeper. Um, Maybe let's just start there. Let's start with a little bit of the background from Luther on to where we are today, and then I've got a number of questions to kind of dive into with regards to what it's like to be in the industry, especially everything that's happened from 2018 to today. But before we do, so for those that don't know, Luther's a college up in Decorah, Iowa. You're still in Iowa at this point, so let's maybe just kind of set the stage on the market that you serve currently. So where are you located? What's kind of the market that you serve? Let's set that stage first.
Yeah. So I am in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which you probably wouldn't know because everyone only knows Des Moines, but we are the second biggest town in all of Iowa, which is pretty cool. Don't ask me population, I won't know that answer, but I kind of serve just Cedar Rapids in the corridor. So really what that means is think of Cedar Rapids proper and then like an hour radius kind of around that. We call that the corridor. I have no idea why. It just is what it is. So that takes me up to my hometown of Manchester, all the way past Iowa City on the south end, and then kind of about an hour east and west. There's not much over there. Welcome to Iowa, but cornfields, really.
Man, I love that so much. And for those that'll watch this later on that don't know who I am, originally from Iowa, obviously went to Luther with Tyler, and came from a small town called Mason City, Iowa, which, I always get the question now that I live down here in Texas. It's like, so, what's Iowa look like? Where are you from? All that kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, I'm from this teeny tiny town that's like 28,000 people, hasn't grown in the last like 30 some years. And it's like the biggest town in an hour in any direction. Right.
Yeah,
And they're like,
it's
oh, okay.
crazy. Yeah.
So,
I think like
you know,
average population of our cities besides like that is like maybe 5 to 10,000. Like it's pretty
yes,
little. So
it's it's ridiculous and awesome all at the same time. So let's walk through that journey. So you left school, graduated in 2013. You mentioned between that point in 2018 and getting into the real estate industry, you had a good job.
yeah.
Kind of walk us through what did that look like? What was that journey before leading up to this entry point into real estate?
Yeah, so I started in the social work industry, kind of entry level. Many people will know that in the human service field, to go higher, you need to get higher education. And after going to school already, I was kind of maybe apathetic towards continuing on going into debt on that side of things. So just kind of did what I could in the social work industry, and I felt peaked really early. The people that unfortunately in that industry tend to be successful, you work in that industry because you want to work with people and you get to do things like this where we get to socially interact. But unfortunately, in social work, in my experience specifically, the further up you move the chain, the farther away you got from working with people, and it felt more paper pushing. So that was kind of like what happened. By 25, I was the director of a nonprofit and felt very stuck because I didn't know where to go. I wasn't planning on having a career change. I didn't realize that until a random seminar told me that I should. But that's really the nuts and bolts. Is I just was working in the mental health field, dealt with a lot of schizophrenia, depression, you name it, I saw it type thing, and kind of organized the rehabilitation back into the community after experiencing some pretty traumatic mental health experiences. But yeah, and then real estate kind of changed the whole game. I still feel like I'm a social worker, full disclosure. Um, but now instead of dealing with mental illness, I'm just dealing with a lot of stress because moving is chaos. So
Mm,
yeah.
that's fascinating. That was going to be a question I was going to ask, was kind of the crossover between the almost like the soft skills that you learn
Definitely.
in the types of, roles and things like that you've had leading up to it, and then and how that kind of plays over into the real estate field. But all right, so fast forwarding, get to 2018, go to a seminar, and just like completely ready to make this transition. What was it about the seminar that just like opened your eyes and made you go, this looks like a lot of fun, I might be interested in testing it a little bit further?
Yeah, I think it just came to that I wasn't feeling challenged anymore. And the really cool thing about real estate is you kind of get to, it is what you make it. And if you make it a challenge, it becomes one. And I think I liked the fact that I could take control of my work-life balance. Like it was me and only me, and I didn't have to worry about, certain aspects of other careers that can limit your potential. When I felt like I could be awesome doing something else, it was a qualification that got in the way, where now I can just be the best agent I can be, and that's all there is to it.
Was it, did you have any like fear, making a career change in general, or any like big leap like that in life? I know for me and like my own experience, there was plenty of times where it was like, I'm really afraid that this may not work out the way that I want
Oh,
it
for
to.
sure.
So like, what was that like for you? Like, did you have a bit of that? Was there some
Oh, for sure.
hesitation, or was it
Dude,
just
I was
like,
an
nope?
anxious mess. This receding hairline doesn't come from a lack of stress at 32, so like it definitely was like the most stressed. And I think like everyone could even tell I walked around with like a panic on my face. I felt like an idiot. I was like, what am I doing? I have a great job that pays regularly, going to something that is strictly commission. Like it feels stupid at the end of the day because you're like, why would I ever do that? So I was an anxious mess. And the reality of it is that doesn't go away. Even 7 years being in this industry, waking up today, I was like, I'm the coolest agent there is. Like, it's the best job. And by the time I'm getting out of the shower, it's like, am I? Like, do I need to pull up Indeed and find something else? Like, because like you get one call that can like really just take away all of the joy and pleasantries. And then you get another call 10 minutes later and you're like, that's why I stay. So yes, being brand new, I was anxious, but even today, I would still say that translates very thoroughly into my life.
How do you manage that? Because I'm guessing for a lot of folks out there who will be listening to this, watching it later on, at some degree in their life, in their jobs, things like that, likely feel very similar.
Yeah.
So what have you found? Like, have you kind of learned a process? Have you kind of found some ways that allow you to kind of cope and manage through kind of those ups and downs and things like that? But what has worked for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think the first thing I want to say, like the biggest piece of advice, is there is no such thing as a perfect job. Every job has its own set of BS, and that's why it's work and not play. So like just because I'm stressed in this job doesn't mean I'm not going to feel those same things in any other job. And so that's really, I think, has been the biggest coping skill for me, is recognizing that this is why we call it work and we don't call it play. And it makes it okay for me specifically when I can kind of separate that avenue, because at the end of the day, this is a business, right? And even it sometimes feels personal because I'm kind of selling myself at the end of the day. We have to remember it's always just business and not pleasure. And that's why it's okay to feel that emotional stability. And you just got to sign up to ride that roller coaster as you would with any other job ever.
I like that. So, all right, I want to peel back some layers, and these first few years in getting into the real estate industry. And I imagine for most that jump into the industry, the first year or two isn't always sunshine and rainbows. You know, got to go out there, got to get leads, got to find the right type of people, build the relationships, kind of do all the maybe not so exciting work to start, you know, getting some first deals and things like that in. What was that like for you? Were you able to kind of join a team that had a really strong support system? Was it just like you got to go out there and hustle and figure it out? You mentioned kind of having your own, like, you know, funky brand and all of that kind of stuff. So how did that kind of evolve in those first few years of figuring out from I've, you know, got a job that pays me to now I've on commission, and that comes with a whole different set of skills and all of that. What did that process look like?
Yeah, so I didn't have the opportunity to join a team. I was independent contractor, even though I was given a salary my first year. I was still kind of thrown to the wolves, lack of a better term, a little bit. And you got to just like learn things the hard way. I think the best thing that I would say that made me successful in that first year is because I became a yes man. I said yes to literally anything. Someone wanted to see a house at 9 p.m. You bet I'm going to go. Someone wants to drive 3 hours over to look at this other place. Like, why not? Like, what do I got to lose? You know what I mean? I think it eventually took me to getting what we call rolling business in this industry. A $30,000 lead eventually rolled into a $2 or $3 million of real estate because that one investor has now bought several properties or the like. They've sent me other people, et cetera. So I think that's kind of what it looked like, as I was kind of putting your nose to the grindstone. The unfortunate statistic is 80% of agents that start in the industry leave within the first 2 years because they can't hack it. So I just didn't want to be another statistic. And that's really what lit the fire under my ass to get it done.
How important is relationships in your industry?
I think the obvious answer is like the most important. Everything I do is networking. Like even if I'm going to a happy hour with my husband, that's still networking. That's every time I go out to eat at a restaurant, I still have to show face. So in real estate, we always have to know a guy for something. We know a lot of people for a lot of reasons, and that's why people get successful is because networking and knowing people is the biggest thing that we do.
Mm. So, I mean, I'm going to project here for a moment, just based on kind of our history and you know, having the chance that I met you back in what 2009,
Yeah.
2000.
That'll make us feel old really quick, won't
Yeah,
it?
no kidding, right? And you know, I was, at least I noticed, you know, when we first met and connected and hung out in college, all that kind of stuff. You always seem to be very have a strong affinity for the relationship building side of things. Like you just naturally, to me, looked like you were very, very good at that. Has that been a skill that you've had to continue to hone and develop over time? Has it just been a natural thing for you? But kind of what are some tidbits of advice or recommendation you would give to others out there on how to go about building strong relationships?
Yeah, I think ultimately the best analogy I can give is I was so afraid becoming a realtor because we have this facade or a relationship to feeling like a used car salesman. And I'm not trying to knock a used car salesman, but that's the opposite of how I want to be interpreted. No offense. And I don't want to feel like I'm doing sales. So I think kind of like what you said is I built my brand on relationship first, business second. And I really just want to be everybody's friend. That's the end of the day. And I want to, like, if you want a house, let me help you do it. I kind of give all of my clients the analogy that I'm kind of like Yoda. I'm just going to hop on your back and show you the force. And you guys tell me at the end of the day what you want, and I'll just teach you all the tricks to get there. Um, so it really has made me successful, I believe, because I think my clients feel that the integrity, I don't care what they buy. I'm not trying, I really don't think I'm a salesman at the end of the day. I mean, yes, I'm in sales, but like, I don't think that I'm selling anything. I'm just kind of teaching at the end of the day. And that's why I think relationship first, business second is kind
Mm,
of what my mantra for everything.
that's awesome. And in the real estate industry in general, I mean, you've got longer sales cycles. It's not traditionally that I'm guessing, and those that I've had the privilege of speaking with, it's not traditionally the like, you know, connect with somebody tomorrow and they're ready to make a purchase the next day.
Yep.
So you've got kind of longer sales cycles. I'm guessing sometimes it's months, sometimes it's even
Yep.
years. How do you continue to maybe develop relationship or stay in contact with folks that you meet along the way, and just kind of keep top of mind? Like what has been your process to kind of build that longer term um, teaching, education, relationship side of things to keep longer term business?
Yeah, definitely. So to give perspective, what I do today, if I meet somebody new, they are likely to pay me from 3 to 6 months from now, is kind of the range from converting somebody to want to work with the funky agent to actually paying the funky agent. That's about the timeline, is about 6 months. What I do is I kind of have what I call my work Bible. I have a spreadsheet, and anybody that I've ever connected with ever, you're on my list. Sorry, and no, I'm not going to spam you. I don't ever email or just like do certain things. But I think what's really allowed me to stay top of mind since you've used that word is my social media presence. I have probably close to 3,000 regular followers. And every time I post anything, it's getting at least 1,000 interactions at a time. So even if it relates to real estate or not, it's just passive marketing. Like now everybody knows my favorite food is eggs. And so now sometimes when people are eating eggs for breakfast, they're like, hey, thinking of you, and they'll be the one to reach out to me kind of thing. So that's really what I do, I feel.
I love
It's
that.
just top of mind marketing, truly.
That's fantastic. So, number of years in the business, got in 2018. For those of us that reflect back on that time frame, even if some of it feels like it's a big blank slate for a chunk of it, there's a number of things that happened between 2018 and today, with regards to housing market, to interest rates, to COVID, to kind of everything under the sun.
We had an
So
inland hurricane in Iowa in that amount of time too.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. So I mean, you've I'm guessing you've experienced a lot in a short period of time with regards to kind of what that industry and the markets can look like. How have you navigated that, or what have you seen from 2018 to today? How has the industry changed? How has kind of the market changed? And how are you adjusting to it in leading your clients?
Yeah. So the quick answer of how I'm adjusting to it is to quote my favorite show ever from Ross is pivot. You always have to pivot. You're playing a game of cards and you can only play with the cards you have in your hand. And no matter what that looks like, you just have to do it. So you're right. We've seen COVID and the lowest interest rates historically ever, and so it made the market really hot. It was a seller's market where you'd put a sign in the yard and within an hour you have 6 offers sight unseen of the property. And that was just, I think what real people realize is that was unsustainable. So after the pandemic and when interest rates started climbing back up, the market slowed and it made a lot of agents really scared because we weren't putting things on market that were overpriced and people were going to buy it, and it became normal to have something sit on market, at least in our area, for roughly 30 days. So which is still very short in the scheme of selling a property, but it didn't feel like that after you were throwing something on market and it would just go without doing anything to it type thing. So I think the real answer is just making sure that you're staying on top of your industry, whatever that is. And for me, that's real estate, knowing what the interest rates are, knowing how things are performing, and pivoting to making sure that you can handle whatever game you're going to be jumping into.
Mm. It's I imagine there's got to be some benefit to starting in 2018 as opposed to starting in, I don't know, let's say late 2020 to early 2021, where at least, yeah, from my perspective, you at least got to start in a more normalized time and then saw it kind of crazy off and then maybe level out a little bit, as opposed to I know a few folks that either got into mortgage or they got into real estate in that 2020-ish timeframe, and then just I think a lot of them exited the industry by the time last year came around, because it became really difficult compared
Yeah.
to the easy things. So I imagine that had to have been helpful to have seen kind of what a more normalized market would have been like.
Yeah, I think we obviously, as humans, feel like we always have it the worst, right? Like I walked uphill both ways to get there type thing. So like as much as like I love hearing that perspective, I felt like it was terrible getting into the industry at the time that I did because even in 2018, it was still really hard. But I think that's just the nature of the industry. That's why that statistic exists of 80% of people tap out, is because when people are looking to spend the most money they've ever spent buying a house, they want somebody with experience. So just being new in general is hard. But I think, yeah, you take what you get and you learn and you just keep on going and become that yes man to get it done.
So when you look at kind of the business today, the types of clientele that you absolutely enjoy and adore working with the most, What type of buyer do you tend to work with? Is it, more on the first time home buyer side? Is it, investors? Is it somewhere in between? Kind of what tends to be what gravitates to you the most?
Yeah, to be honest, most of the people that vibe with me are my age and they're millennials. And luckily for me right now, millennials are kind of controlling the market. We are the first time home buyers and we're also the experienced like home buyers as well that have bought something back right outside of college, et cetera, and have sold again. And then also maybe some people waited a little bit to get that done. So I would say, as many agents do, that I specialize in first timers, and they're my favorite just because it makes me feel like I really know what I'm doing because that they're like ground zero, right? You know what I mean? Like there's just like the level of impression is just so high. So it just like it feels more gratifying for me because you can't be unhappy buying a house. You know, like it's a pretty exciting thing, I guess, unless you're stressed about the payment. I don't know. But I think that's why like my favorite buyer to work with. But I think ultimately, I think what my favorite, like because we all specialize in first timers as realtors, let's be real. But I think my favorite thing is working with someone that's pivoting from their first house ever that they bought and now they're expanding to upgrade into something better because they've raised their family there, and just like seeing them let go of those. I mean, the memories come with them, but like let go of the walls that hold those first time memories into something bigger and better, and just like seeing the excitement because they're like, oh, I don't have to deal with whatever I settled for, the first time kind of thing. So that's probably my favorite client to work with.
I love
The
it.
repeat.
So if you're working with a lot of millennials and kind of the younger-ish generation in the market, I know that there's a lot of headlines out there that millennials can't buy houses and they'll never be able to afford like they could their parents, and all of those types of things. From your perspective, what do you see, or what would you want others to know? If I'm a millennial in the audience, I haven't bought my first home yet, and I'm like on the fence of like, does it make sense? Does it not make sense? From kind of your perspective, what advice what pieces would you want them to know about?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I would want you to know is, at least in Cedar Rapids, Iowa specifically, it doesn't ever not make sense to buy a house. Rent is so much more expensive than your mortgage payment, always, hands down, with these like by leaps and bounds. So, I mean, obviously people sometimes have several roommates, but you could have that same exact situation to buy, and then you at least are building an equity position. So that's, as much as like I'm a millennial and I feel that I know college debt can be very real, especially going to a very small private school. I get it, but like it's just farthest from the truth. I just think that housing, at least here, is super affordable. First time home buyer homes are very reliable, quality construction that I would live in, like I just think it's great, so I just think it's the farthest from the truth. But it is a conception, because when you're feeling like money is really tight and you're hearing all these headlines that millennials are struggling in the way that we are, technically it does feel fraudulent or too good to be true. But I think that's why when I meet with my people for the first time, they're like, oh my gosh, like why didn't I do this sooner? And I was like, that's exactly what I said, like when I bought my first place. So
And there's a lot of we'll call them incentives out there in terms of lending programs, finance, like there's a lot of ways that it becomes easier than I think some people make it out to be in many cases. Having a little bit of background in mortgage myself, I think that was something that at least I encountered a bunch. Was it's easier than you think it is, and at the end of the day, everybody has to live somewhere. So why not own the equity of the thing that you live in?
And it's a really cool thing about Cedar Rapids specifically, and Iowa in general, is we have zero down options. So like people that feel they can't ever save for a down payment, like you can take that part of the equation completely out, because they have like opportunities for people that don't have a lot of savings to still become homeowners. It's really awesome.
Oh, out of curiosity, just because it's coming to my head, and especially being here in the Austin market where things are just exploding all the time, which is very different than the Mason City, teeny tiny town that I came from. Do y'all have, especially in Cedar Rapids, it's more of a developed area. It continues to grow, to my knowledge. Do y'all have a lot of new construction, things like that happening, or is it primarily existing homes? Kind of what does that market look like for Cedar Rapids specifically?
So Cedar Rapids, actually, from what they say, according to real estate stuff, I didn't fact check this, is kind of a leading indicator of the real estate industry in general. And so people look to Cedar Rapids to see what happens here first, and then they typically see that kind of trickle into other markets like Austin, for example. We do have a lot of new construction, but the really difference that Iowa has that maybe other places don't is we have land and space to build that. So, and I think sometimes those more rural communities are becoming more and more popular because that's where the land is. So we do a lot of new construction sales. I have a lot of agents represent builders. I have one. So like it's all just a piece of that. But I think the biggest thing is nationwide, we're in a housing crisis. People specifically are coming to Cedar Rapids because we have some really heavy employers that do nationwide things and outside of the country things that are huge. And so a lot of people are flooding to Cedar Rapids, which feels strange to say, to live here. And so you're also seeing a lot of multifamily type housing coming up that you can own, a lot of condo associations or zero lot lines. So you can fit more people into less space. So that's kind of what we're seeing probably the most of is what I would say is a lot of like luxury, I would apartment style condos typically.
Yeah, that was always a fascinating concept to me. And I don't think I ever really like recognized that until moving down here to Austin. Like you see a lot more of that stuff, right? I mean, it's just when you got an area of the country that just is has a flood of people coming in, and the fact that, yeah, as you pointed out, there's a bit of a housing crisis like nationwide. There's just more people than there are places to live. Um, and the when we first moved down here to Texas, we rented first, and we rented an apartment. And I've always been a homeowner, all that kind of stuff, until we moved down here. Because at first it was like, I don't know where I'm going to go, and I was like blown away with what an apartment even looks like today. Like they're just beautiful. Like we 3 bedroom apartment. Like this is the size of maybe like our first home, but it's an apartment. But it was so much more dense and all of that kind of stuff because it's an apartment complex as opposed to a single family home. But kind of some cool things, and exciting to hear that
Yeah.
there's a lot of that happening up in the northern states as well, not just
Iowa
down here.
finally feels fancy a little bit, like we have 2-story apartments, like you see in New York almost, like where there's stairs inside of it, and you're like, where the heck does this go? You know what I mean? You're like, you could have a view, like, okay, it's kind of a cool concept that I've never thought Iowa would ever get to share with some of those cooler states.
Yeah, that is really cool. So I know we've covered a lot of ground, and really chatted about a whole bunch of different stuff here. I always love to kind of shift over to a few rapid fire questions, just kind of pull out some, we'll call them wisdom nuggets for the audience. So the first one is, you look at kind of your journey through college, through first career to career change, and kind of where you're at today. What would you say for you is kind of your key to success, kind of traits, routines, anything like that that kind of allows you to be successful on a consistent basis?
Definitely. Two things to that. One, I kind of mentioned it before, be a yes man. Always say yes to whatever it's going to be. It doesn't ever hurt you to try something. And if it doesn't work, or be a part of something, and if you hate it, you can leave. Just those yes opportunities have really allowed me to grow in ways that I think I never would have done otherwise. I said yes to go to a seminar I had no interest in, and now I'm here as one of the top 2% of agents in the world. So that's just kind of like the tidbit of success that I will stay with. And then the other piece of it is be yourself. I was always, when I was younger, afraid of being this like nerdy kid that was obsessed with Pokemon, and just like, why? Like, who's going to want to hang out with me? And like, now outside of high school and college, I feel like those behaviors are celebrated, and people would rather, especially in a sales industry, feel like somebody is real rather than some stuffy guy in a suit. You're never going to see me put on dress pants for work, and that's just not who I am. And I think that's just the biggest answer is be yourself, because that's who people want. They don't want somebody you're not.
That's fantastic. Advice, and I'm going to split this one up into kind of two pieces. Uh, what advice would you give to other aspiring real estate agents out there, whether they're just getting into the industry, or in their first couple years? What advice would you give them?
First thing is, if you're even considering of being a realtor, do it. There's never the perfect time. There's always going to be life that feels like it's in the way. Make sure that you just try, because if you don't try, it's automatically not going to happen. So that's the first piece of advice I would say. Otherwise, I would say is, if you can, make sure that you can try to put away some sort of nest egg for like 6 months, because if you don't have that and you don't take off very quickly, that can make you another statistic. So please don't be another statistic. Um, and the last piece is just making sure that you have a quality support system that's not going to ask you, did you sell a house today? Because you obviously didn't. Being new is very hard. And Instead, having those constructive conversations of saying, what are you doing so you can sell a house today? Or saying something like that, that is a build you up rather than make you feel insufficient for something you're already really trying to do.
That's
The last answer I have to that is your broker is going to make you have a goal threshold that you need to sell so many houses within X amount of years. I don't look at business that way. I look at business as the rule of three. So making sure that I'm doing three things every day to get business. I have three people in my hopper that are hopefully going to give me business. And if I don't, then I'm going to be doing extra three things to make that happen.
Ooh, I like that. That is fantastic. So then on the other end of the spectrum, for the home buyers out there, any advice that you would give home buyers in today's environment or market?
Yeah, there's a lot of buzz that you shouldn't trust your agent, and I feel like you should. We win nothing by putting you in a home that's terrible. So trust your agent, listen to their advice for whatever that market is going to be, because as much as I think I'm awesome for Cedar Rapids. I don't know anything about Texas, for example. So trust the person and the professional for that area. Um, Otherwise, making sure that you have your expectations in line. It's really easy when you get pre-approved to hear a really fancy number that you can get pre-approved up to, and many home buyers will maximize that. But just remember that the higher you buy, the more you pay per month. And I don't want you to be house poor, because most first-time home buyers are young and you got a lot of life to live. So make the smart choice rather than the pretty choice.
Ooh, that is powerful advice. Book recommendations. Any book recommendations, can be industry, can be business, can be fun, can be whatever you want it to be. If you're not a big reader, then audiobooks, podcast, other content consumption, methodologies out there, but anything that you would give as recommendations for the audience.
Yeah, I wish I read more. I've always aspired to, and I just don't. And I hate that about myself. But the biggest thing that I would say is looking into like content stuff is there's this guy, his name is Sean Carpenter. He is a realtor that talks about top of mind marketing and just gives you all of these crazy ideas like the 4-H club of just things that you can do to be successful in the real estate industry, whether you're a home buyer or an agent yourself. I think it's really awesome. So definitely look him up. He's been a huge model builder for what I do. um, yeah, that's about all I got on that side of it.
Beautiful. Uh, Before we get to the final question, because there's one question I always love to kind of wrap up these conversations on. For those that are in the audience that want to, connect with you, that want to follow you, that want to, learn all of the amazing things that you're up to, and potentially even work with you one of these days, either to sell or buy a home, where can we advise them to go for more information?
Yeah. I always tell you Google's the best friend of everybody. So you can Google my name and I will guarantee you I'll pop up. If not, feel free to add me on any of my social media platforms. It's typically Tyler got Lautke for all of my handles. Um, and I'll be there. I can usually take a DM pretty quickly. So
Beautiful. Instagram, your most active one, or?
Facebook and Instagram, pretty equal. Yes, both.
Perfect. I will be sure to put those in the video description below. So once we kind of wrap up all that kind of stuff, make sure to go click the links, send a direct message, say, hey, saw the conversation, amazing. It's always fun to just make some additional connections, things like that here. So if you're watching this later on, please take a moment and do that. But outside of that, Tyler, I always like to end on one final question, which is simply, what is most inspiring to you today?
I think it's a quote that I heard in my morning workout today. Full disclosure, I'm like knee deep in the Peloton community. So like I'm stealing this quote and I'm going to ride with it forever. The most inspiring thing to me today is you don't have to, you get to. It's always sometimes really hard when you get a call at 8 p.m. and I feel like I have to take that call or I have to go to that showing when I would rather be having dinner with my family. But at the end of the day, I don't have to do that. I get to do that because it's what makes me successful every single day.
It's amazing. Tyler, I wanted to just say thank you again for allowing us to just kind of connect and go through this process. It's been fun to know you all these years and kind of reconnect again and just kind of chat a little bit deeper about this professional career inside of things, beyond school. And no, it's been a lot of fun. I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for having me. I love having this. So it's fun.